Thank you very much, Peter. You were just in time. I'm sure you gave some very good hints to the audience. And now, last but not least, there is Mr. Giuseppe De Santo, who is a young lawyer but very experienced in maritime law. He's been working with Studio Laura, so he's a host, our host, and so we take this opportunity to thank him too for having organized this meeting. You know we have time constraints, so please, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you very much to everyone. I will try in this brief speech to give a picture of the tortious claim under Italian law against the shipyard, which is quite unusual. The first question should be, who can bring forward the tortious claim against the shipyard? Well, the answer is the ship owner, obviously, but also any third party which is not part of the contract, but which has been damaged by a defective ship, the defects of which could be ascribed in a way that we will deal with in a moment to the shipyard. We will then have to figure out when it should be, sorry. Okay. When it is convenient to start an action in tort against the shipyard. Well, in those cases in which the contractual protection does not operate or cannot be invoked. Let's think about a claim brought in tort by a party which is not part of the contract, or a claim by which compensation is sought for damages which are correctly and expressly excluded by contract. Also in those cases in which the contract provides a time bar which has not been met. In those cases, a tortious claim could represent an alternative to a contractual action. We will now see what are the legal grounds for an action in tort under Italian law. The first scheme is offered by Article 2043 of Italian Civil Code, which is the main rule on tortious liability under Italian law. This rule provides for a very heavy and specific burden of proof to be discharged on the side of claimants. In particular, claimants will have to prove a willful or culpable misconduct on the side of the shipyard, and also a causal link between this conduct and the damages they are seeking compensation. Among the conducts which may lead to a tortious liabilities of a shipyard, there is the wrongful design or manufacturing of some parts of the ship. So we can see that the conduct, the culpable or willful conduct, is the key element of this scheme. It has been decided in a quite old case, a case decided on 1980 by an Italian court, that a company operating a fishing boat was allowed to bring an action in tort against the shipyard for the loss of the rudder during the fishing. In that case, the action was brought forward by a third party, since the claimants were not originally part of the shipbuilding contract. The willful misconduct in designing the rudder was proved through a technical survey. However, in the end, the court did not grant any compensation for the damages due to economic losses suffered by claimants. This because this decision is actually quite old. Since 1980, the Italian jurisprudence on the tortious liability has been evolving, and now we can say that tortious liability may surely cover also economic losses. Another scheme, another legal ground for an action in tort could be offered by another rule in the Italian Civil Code. It is Article 1669, which is a rule which applies to the building contract, to the ordinary building contract. This rule was, the applicability of this rule to the shipbuilding contract was stated in very old case by the Italian Supreme Court. It's a case that dated in 1956. In that case, the Italian Ship Court admitted the applicability of this rule also to the shipping contract, although this decision was strongly adversed by most part of Italian authors on the basis of the assumption that a building cannot legally be compared to a ship. So most part of authors disagree on the applicability of this rule also to the shipbuilding contract. In the case decided by the Italian Supreme Court, claimants were seeking compensation against the shipyard because after 1 year since the delivery, the vessel water tightness was compromised due to an erroneous apportionment and design on some parts of the hull. However, also in this case, claimants did not obtain compensation for the damages they were seeking, because it was ascertained in this case that the ship owner had been operating the vessel being aware of these problems. And also on the basis of the fact that the vessel kept the class from the delivery since the very moment in which the damage appeared. Making a comparison between the two legal schemes, the one offered by Article 2043 and the one offered by Article 16 and 69, we can see that when a court accepts the second one, the legal scheme based on Article 1669, this could present some advantages. This because this article sets a sort of legal-based guarantee, and the claimant acting on the ground of this article can rely on a presumption of liability against the shipyard, while using the scheme offered by Article 2043, claimants would have to discharge a very heavy burden of proof, especially with regard to the key element, which is the willful or culpable misconduct. So, sorry. Now, we can focus on what are the damages that can be compensated by a successful action in tort. Well, referring to the most recent jurisprudence in Italy, we can say that today an action in tort could allow the compensation of those damages which most commonly are excluded by the contract. Let's think about the loss of hire or economic losses due to the stoppage of the vessel. In the case of the loss of the rudder, we may imagine a first voice of damages linked to the ship repair cost, which is normally covered, but also all those damages suffered by the ship owner who has to stop the vessel for allowing the repair to be carried on. So also those damages could be compensated by an action in tort. So giving some answers summing up what we have just said, we can give roughly answers to the 4 questions we have dealt with. Who can bring a tortious claim against the shipbuilding? Any party, not only the ship owner, but also third parties. For example, in the first case I mentioned, that one of the fishing boat, claimants were not part of the contract. They were the owners of the vessel, but not part of the shipbuilding contract. When it is convenient to start an action in tort, each time in which the contractual protection cannot be invoked, for example, if claimant is not part of the contract, or cannot operate, or is not useful. For example, when we are seeking compensation for damages which are correctly excluded by the contract. What are the legal grounds? We mentioned 2 different schemes. One, that one given by Article 2043, which provides for a very heavy and difficult burden of proof to be discharged, and the other one offered by Article 1669, which lies on a bolder interpretation of the rule, but when accepted by the court may be more useful. In fact, we can rely on a presumption of liability against the shipyard. Finally, what damages can be compensated by successful action? Well, these damages could be both direct economic damages, but also indirect consequential economic losses. And I've saved about 30 seconds. I think I won the prize.